would be fine.
Okay, I always get a little carried away because there's so much to talk about. So at some stage, I'll just have to rein myself in and say, okay, that's it.
We all do. We're not going to cut you off. Okay.
No, that's fine. That's great.
We all have that issue.
Cool.
I'll say hello to Dan. Hey, Daniel.
Well, 8 o'clock Sunday morning here. It's a little bit early for me.
Well, I think I'm the only one has a. I think I'm the only one that has a like perfect time. It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon on Saturday, and guess what? I'm the one that scheduled it. So
yeah, that makes sense.
But in all honesty, when we started looking at this, we wanted. Hey, David, we wanted to be able to worldwide bring people in, and so we began looking at the times, and this is the best time if you want the ability for anybody anywhere in the world to join. And you're right.
Yeah, we
I can tell the sunrise is right behind you, right?
I know. It's a perfect day here.
Okay, Tilo, looks like we're about ready to start. You're muted, Tilo.
Hi, Bill.
Okay. Yes, and we are streaming to YouTube. I've got that, and so we're also building up a good audience here. It continues to grow, so I think yeah, we are ready to go.
Okay, just 1 second, and I'll get in there. All right, hello everybody. Welcome to long-awaited Amel Owners Group presentation from PredictWind, and we're really pleased to have Keyrn McMaster here with us. Keyrn is an executive with PredictWind, and she's also she's on the professional women's sailing team. She's gone out there and done things that very few of us have done on purpose. Some of us, like me, have wound up in the wrong place at the wrong time and seen some pretty heavy conditions. Keyrn does that on purpose. She's an executive at PredictWind, and she's part of the sales and support team at PredictWind. But she's also somebody who's done it. She's been there just like us, and has done a good job of it. I'm going to turn the presentation over to Keyrn in just a second. There's a little bit of housekeeping I want to take care of first, and that is as we go through the presentation with Keyrn, use the chat feature on your end if you have a question. And I think let's send the chat message to everyone. Tilo will pick it up. Okay, is that okay, Tilo? Is that okay with you? Yeah, because if you send the chat to everyone, then if you have a question and somebody else has the question, it's not going to get duplicated. It'll be a little bit easier. So with that, Keyrn, welcome to our group. We really appreciate you joining us this Sunday morning in New Zealand, Saturday afternoon in Texas, and Saturday evening over there with Tilo. Am I correct? Yeah. Okay. It's your meeting, Keyrn. Thank you.
Thank you. So yeah, thank you for the invitation to talk to the Amel owners. This is a great opportunity for us. We really value this sort of contact with our customers and potentially new customers. So it's yeah, I'm really happy to be here. So a little bit more about who I am, so that you know that I'm not some fake that's just giving you a bit of information on weather. So I come from a sailing family that's third, almost fourth generation sailmakers now. So my grandfather started making sails on the docks of the Auckland Harbour in 1927, and so sailing's in my blood. It always has been. I've competed in 2 round the world races, so the Whitbread and then the Volvo Ocean Race, and professionally sailed for about 15 years before moving back to New Zealand and raising some kids and starting to work for PredictWind. it's an awesome company, and I didn't know much about, I thought I knew a lot about weather when I started at PredictWind, and I really quickly realized I didn't. So I'm more than happy to share some of the insights of, how I use PredictWind and why we do what we do. So yeah, my plan for the webinar is just to introduce PredictWind and sort of what we are, our goals and how we achieve it. Talk a little bit about weather models, because that's a big part of what we do, and understanding those is the biggest thing that I didn't understand. So I want people to know that and why we offer them all. And then I thought I'd go through a day in the life of how I use PredictWind, because I use it in multiple different ways. I've got kids that surf, and I've got my mother likes to know when she's going to hang out the washing and things like that. So, and then I've got friends doing the Newport Bermuda race, and I just sailed a boat up to Fiji 2 weeks ago. So, and in every one of those aspects, I used PredictWind. My goal is to keep it to about 30 to 45 minutes, and then we'll have some questions at the end. And yeah, so we'll get going. I've got a combination of slideshows and just me talking, and also showing you what we've got on the website and how you can use it, so that you actually understand what you can do. So, what is PredictWind? How did it come about? It was started by the owner, and John's still very active in the company, John Bilger. 12 years ago, he's done Olympic sailing in 470s. He's been navigators on America's Cup boats. He was in the weather team for Alinghi for quite a few years. And he got really sick of all of the yachties coming to him and saying, what's the weather going to be like in Chicago? Or what's the weather going to be like in Bermuda, when they were doing their different races, not just the America's Cup. And he thought, oh, there's got to be a better way to do this. And so he started developing this app, where you could put in a location anywhere in the world and get your weather. And so that's where it started, and it's built from there into this company where we now have over 50 people working for us. Lots of developers, lots of sales, a lot of support team, because one of our goals is to provide the best support in the marine industry for anything. And I'm sure you've all experienced that there is some bad support out there. It's pretty hard to get some information on your technology sometimes, and we want to be a company that really helps you. We're all sailors at PredictWind, so I'm just one of a crew of people who have done, I think we've got Olympics, about 8 round the worlds with Volvos, all sorts of dinghy sailors, kiteboarders. We've got the best kiteboarder in New Zealand working for us, so we cover all aspects of it. The goal of PredictWind is to make complex and accurate weather easily accessible to anyone, anywhere on the planet. So that's sort of, when you take everything else out of it, that focuses in on our goal, what we're trying to do. So complex and accurate weather, easily and accessible to anybody. I'm going to show you some slideshows, because when you use PredictWind, there's so many ways you can get this information. And we've done that for a reason, because people have just a computer at home, or they only use their iPhone or their Android, or they want to go offshore and they're doing, circumnavigations in their Amel boat, or, whatever they are planning on doing. And we want you to be able to access that weather regardless of where you are. So I'm going to start sharing my screen. It's Sunday morning here for me, so bear with me if I have any technical issues. I had great plans of, getting to bed early and being really ready for this, and then my daughter rang me at 12:30. She was out at a party. She's 18, and there was all sorts of dramas. So as you can imagine, that was a late night. So anyway, we'll see how we go. Okay, so this first slide is just quickly to introduce how you can access PredictWind. So I'm just going to move my little Zoom screen here. So we have PredictWind forecasts on multiple devices. Like I said, you can view it on computers. You can download the app onto your iPhone or your Android or your iPad. And so we have a combination of what we call online tools and offline tools. So the online tools are when you're connected to internet or cellular connection. So when you're in port, you can use the online tools. And these tools are the PredictWind app and the PredictWind website. You can do just about anything on here. You can access daily briefings, forecasts, weather routing, departure planning, GPS tracking, all of that sort of stuff. So that's all online. with our PredictWind app and the PredictWind website. When you go offshore, you need to switch to the offshore app. And this is a dedicated app that we've built so that you can essentially download all the weather information via a satellite connection. But you can also download if you don't have an Iridium Go or an Iridium Pilot, but you've still got SSB, you can still download it all through email or through Starlink or through, whatever you've got. So using a combination of these two is great. The reason I mention it is because a lot of people who are going offshore don't realize that we have these online tools, and when you're in port, they're great to use with cellular connection and things. So yeah, I'll just stop sharing now. So how do we achieve getting the best weather data? So there's lots of forecast information out there, and this is the thing I wanted to start talking about, because when I joined PredictWind, now I look back at it, I was pretty clueless about weather models and weather forecasting, how it's all generated and how we come to offer what we do. So at PredictWind, we have 6 weather models. And what is a weather model? Because if you don't understand what a weather model is, you're going to come to us and say, oh, your weather forecasts are crap. What are you doing? So that's not as easy as that. And it's not an exact science. So you can't always expect an exact forecast, but we try to make it as accurate as possible. And so I'm going to talk to you as I had this, when I talk to someone who knows nothing about weather, I do this very brief explanation, which sort of in your head gets you to understand what it's like. And then I'll go into detail about how we actually make the weather models. So a weather model is, a computer generated forecast, and the computer generated forecast needs to gather information from all over the world, run it through a computer model, and then spit out the forecast at the end. So there's a very technical way to do that. But if you imagine, your weather model is a person sitting at the table, and every 12 hours, he or she goes and grabs all the information from around the world. They're called initial conditions. And these initial conditions come from airplanes, from boats, from buoy data, from satellite imagery, from, it's gathered from everywhere. And there's a few companies in the world that do this. You gather all of that information, you look at it, and you go, okay, this is what I think the forecast is going to do for the next 12 hours based off my knowledge, my model in my head. And from that model and from those initial conditions, I generate a 7 or a 10-day forecast. So that's what I think is going to happen. But then you've got another model on the other side of the world doing exactly the same thing. But their information and their knowledge is a little bit different. So they gather the initial conditions and then they generate a forecast. And so you start to get these different ideas of what the forecast is going to be. One of them might be right, one of them might be wrong. A few of them might be sort of all saying the same thing. And that's why we offer so many different models at PredictWind. So I'm going to start sharing my screen again. And this is where it just gets a little bit more technical. So, okay. All right. So at PredictWind, we offer 6 different models. We offer 6 global models. So global is worldwide. And so you'll hear us talking about different things like ECMWF, SPIRE, UKMO, GFS, and then the PredictWind models. So these are all generated every 12 hours. They gather the initial conditions, they put them into their model and their computer, and they generate a forecast. And so there's a lot of information online about, what these different models are, but essentially ECMWF is from Europe. It's one of the highest rated models in the world. I think it's actually #1 at the moment. SPIRE and UKMO are new models that we've just added lately. And UKMO, the European model. SPIRE is an American model basing its forecasts off a new technique where they measure the Earth atmosphere with radio occultation. And I can send you more information on that if you want. It's pretty cool. GFS is the one that we all know. It's free, it's from NOAA. You see that on most weather news stations and things like that. And then PredictWind, we're the only company in the world that generates our own forecast models, and we run it to a resolution of 1K. So we have our own forecast. But what is PWG and PWE? So we have this one model, if you go back to what I was talking about before, but we gather initial conditions from ECMWF and from GFS, and we run them through our own model. And so when you put the initial conditions from ECMWF through our model, you get the PWE. And when you gather the GFS initial conditions, you put them into our model, you get the PWG. So it's not the forecast that we're putting in, it's the initial conditions. So we buy this information from ECMWF. We spend over $100,000 a year doing it. So those initial conditions are what we're grabbing and then making our model from it. On top of that, we also supply some regional models, which are more high resolution, often shorter in length, normally more accurate. So again, we have our PW models, PWG and PWE. And then for different parts of the world, we have NAM, HER, and AROME, depending on where you are. So these models aren't worldwide, but they can be very accurate and they're great short term for the next sort of 24 hours. So that's just a little bit about models, but why do we do that? Oh, sorry, I was just going to show you very quickly how we do the process. So this is what I was talking about. The initial conditions are entered into the system. They're like a photographic snapshot of the world, and we run that through our model. And so when we start talking about resolutions, so we run a 50-kilometer resolution. And so that's, you know, like one forecast for every 50-kilometer square. Might not be that accurate, doesn't take into account geography and things. So then we run it again at 8 kilometers because we want to see the, you know, is there wind shadow on the lee shore of an island? And then for certain areas of the world, we run it again at 1 kilometer. So it's very accurate. For every 1 kilometer square, there is a little forecast for that little bit. And so when you build all of those little bits up, you get a really good, you know, image of the forecast. So once we have all these models, what do we do with them? So I'm just going to check which is my next screen here. So I'm going to stop sharing. And I'm going to just jump to a different screen. I'm going to start showing you how we actually use it. So this is where we come to a day in the life of Keyrn. So once you know about the models, then you can start to understand what we're doing in PredictWind. So my daughter loves to surf and my mum she loves the weather as well. She got me into sailing. I used to sail every Tuesday night with her on the women's racing and things. But she's not really into computers. So on her iPhone or on her computer, she can go to the PredictWind website. So on a website, obviously, or the app. And she goes to what we have as the daily briefing here up in the top. So under forecasts, daily briefing. Hopefully this comes in. And so she can see very quickly, morning, noon, and night, what the weather's going to do. There's lots of information here: wind, temperature, tide, UV index. And this is all collated. So we're taking the hard work out for you. We're doing it all. We gather all of that information, we look at it, we run it through our algorithms, and we come up with this text forecast, a really quick way to see what's going on. However, I like to dig into why it's only going to be 3 to 6 knots. So I work down to the tables, forecast tables. And in the forecast tables, you can see a really good breakdown of what the weather's going to do. And here is where we get into the different models. So you can see here we've got the 6 different models. And what we're looking for is a consensus. If you just had one and it was saying 3 knots, it might be 3 knots, but it might be 6 knots because this is what the forecasts are saying. But you can see trends here, which are great. Like we can see that up until about 4 o'clock this afternoon, the breeze is going to be pretty light, and then it's slowly going to build. And then most of the models are saying that it's going to be sort of 15 to 18 knots, and down here gusting to 23. But you know, there's an outlier here of the GFS thinks it's going to be more windy. Now, why is that? Well, because perhaps the GFS model sees a front coming through faster, or a whole low pressure moving across faster, or further north or further south. So that's why you can't just look at any one model and go, oh, this is, you know, 30 gusting 35. but the other models are saying 15, gusting 20. So we get asked that question a lot. Why does one model say that and one model doesn't? Well, you know, they've got their own idea. That little guy sitting around the table doing his model is just one of 6 people sitting around the table, and they're all having a discussion about who's going to be right. And one of them will be, maybe all of them will be. Like, and here, because it's so, the model has just been run, it's very accurate. As you extend out past sort of 5 days, forecast models aren't that great. We do run our models out to 10 days. So there's lots of other information we can look at as well in here. Some people are graph people. I'm not personally, but John is. John Bilger, the owner of the company, he's fanatical about graphs. He likes to see that very quickly you can see that, well, potentially all the models are saying that there's wind building. It's not a given that it's going to be 30 knots, but you know, they're all building. So you know that you're going to go out for your day's sailing, the breeze is going to be building. So you need to be aware of that and then change your sailing accordingly. Then you can dig in further into things like the wind maps. Oops, what happened there? There we go. So now I've got a wind map. And because I'm on the website, I can review 2 wind maps side by side. So I can look at 2 different models. And you know, why would I want to do that? Well, because one model's saying it's going to blow 15 knots, the other model's saying it's going to blow 30. Why the difference? So I can run my time slider, and I can see, you know, there's decent breeze coming through. They both look quite similar. I can zoom in, I can change my model. So I can change it to ECMWF. I could change it to 1 kilometre. And at 1 kilometre, this is really great because you can see now what I was talking about with the lee shore. So this is in Auckland Harbour. We've got this massive island in the middle called Rangitoto. If any of you've watched the America's Cup, this is where they were sailing in here. And you can see, you know, the breeze coming in on the windward side of Rangi, and then over here, this lee shore. So, you know, it'd be pretty nice to be parked up in this little bay here for the night because you know you're going to be protected. And so this is where you see the high resolution models give you better accuracy. So, you know, that's great to see that it's going to be protected in here. I can go to any of these ones down the side here. I'll just jump through all of them quickly. Wave map, gust, cape, rain, cloud, isobar, air temperature, sea temp. So there's lots of things to look at there. We've got a validation study. So you might think, well, which forecast is the best? I want to know. We've created a tool where you can look at validation, and it actually tells you which model is doing the best job at the moment for this week or for the last month. So that gives you some confidence that you could, you know, put a bit more weight on that model. If you think one model's doing a better job, you might trust it a bit more for the next week. But they never always one model is right. Again, you go back to having the 6 models, looking for consensus. The more information you have, the smarter decision you can make. So those are all under our forecast. So you can get those on the PredictWind app, the PredictWind website. You can also get observations, which is what I love. So we've got, I think it's over 100,000 observation stations around the world now. And the reason observations are so important is because you can, before you go out for your day, you can look at the observations and go, okay, well, you know, at the moment around Auckland, there's about 11.5 knots from the south-southwest. I'll jump back to my forecast tables and look at which model is predicting that for now. And that model is doing a really good job of predicting the forecast. So I might put a little bit more weight on my trust in that model for the next 12 or 24 hours. So you're almost doing your own validation of the model by looking at the observations. What we're also doing is dragging in webcams from all around the world. So we're building on this all the time. But I can look here, this is one of the places that I sail out of, and it's looking pretty calm at the moment. So that's nice just to, if you know there's a webcam in your area or where you're going, you can look at it and actually go, okay, that looks pretty nice, or oh, I'm not going out today, it's looking nasty. So, you know, these are all things that you can get in PredictWind as well. We've also built local knowledge. So local knowledge is part of our website. We wanted to crowdsource information around the world for all of our customers. You know, what is it looking like? So this is Rangitoto. someone's put some information in here about a walking track. We also have AIS on here now, so you can look at any boat and see what it is and where it's going. So, you know, there's a lot of AIS websites out there, but you can do it all in PredictWind as well now. So local knowledge is, we're crowdsourcing it. If anybody wants to go in and add spots for their area, this is a great way to then go and, you know, when you're sailing, I know that there's a really good crayfish spot up here where you can get crayfish at pretty shallow levels. So yeah, that's a goodie. And so now everybody else knows that as well. There's probably none left. Anyway, so those are, you know, the very basics of PredictWind, some of the information you can get. But then we've got different levels of subscription. So all of the things I've showed you, most of them are on the free version. If you go up to the basic version, which is $29 US a year, you can have up to 10 saved locations. So you can see here, I've got all of these different locations around the world. So I can very quickly jump to my different spots and get forecasts for that specific location. So that's all location-based stuff. After that, we've got some tools. So if you are planning ocean passages, I know a lot of the Amel owners go offshore, blue water sailing. The standard or professional level gives you a whole heap more information. So I'm going to run through those. How am I going for my time? No, not too bad. We can do weather routing, departure planning. We can supply you ocean data. We can do GPS tracking. So I'm going to go through all of these. The first one is weather routing. So I know at the moment the Newport Bermuda race is going on. I also just helped my brother take his Beneteau 62 from New Zealand to Fiji. Took us 6 days. We had a couple of nice days, a couple of terrible days, and then we motor sailed at the end. I want to know why, you know, when we're going to have that, and so we can prepare the boat. So for any of you that don't know, that's what weather routing is. You move your green start to where you want to start, your red finish to where you want to finish. You put in your boat polars so that we know what type of boat you have. That's a key to the routing. So we go up to our routing preferences here. We've got a huge list of, what have we got here for the Amel? We've got the 50, 54, 55, 64. If any of you have got boat polars for other boats, we can add them into our system. So then they're there automatically for you. So if anyone wants to give me those, I can get the development team to add them. Once you've chosen your polar, every time you request a weather route from our system, it will use those polars. So, you know, how fast does your boat sail upwind? How fast does it sail reaching? Things like that. Once we know that information in our system, we can generate a weather route for you based off that and tell you what's going to happen. So I'm just going to calculate a quick route here. I know, so I've got a lot of friends doing the Newport Bermuda race. I know they're about here at the moment. So I'm just going to run a route and see how long it's going to take them to get to Bermuda. Now, this is really interesting. Even though the route is still loading, the route can take up to 1 or 2 minutes. You just have to be a little bit patient. The reason it takes so long is it's collating all of those weather models, all of that data, your boat polars, and then trying to figure out your fastest way from A to B. And so you can see here already there's a decent front here of some sort. And I am going to switch to the offshore app to explain in more detail about some of these features. The reason I do that is because the offshore app stores all of the data, and so it's a lot faster to review everything. And so the GRIB files and everything are stored locally on your device. So I can do it in the website. I can do it in the offshore app and in the PredictWind app. But for me, I prefer the offshore app because I get a bit impatient. So what I will do now, I'm going to switch to the offshore app. So hopefully that you can see that now. So this now is the offshore app. I pre-downloaded some GRIB files. GRIB files are just the pretty picture of what the weather's going to do. And so I have downloaded rain GRIBs, but I've also downloaded wind. I've also downloaded cloud, air temp, gust. Ooh, it's looking a bit gusty. CAPE, which is the CAPE is the convective available potential energy. It's essentially the fuel available in the atmosphere to develop thunderstorms. So if there's CAPE, there's storm activity. So you can see down here, pink and purple is not a lot of Cape. Blue is Cape coming through. And then if I run it, you'll see here, you can see the Cape coming through, and it's, there's a lot of Cape down here, then nothing else. But so I've now run this route from A to B, and it's telling me, it's not a roadmap, it's not Google Maps. You don't have to stick to it, but this is what our algorithm, our routing algorithm suggests for you, for your route. And here you can see a big kink, and that's interesting. And we know that that Gulf Stream cranks up that east coast. I can look at ocean data because I've downloaded ocean data, and you can see here specifically why the route has done that U-turn. It's taking advantage of the current. And so the route's always trying to find the best way, the fastest way for you to get from A to B. It's also using ocean data to generate that route. And so it will use it to your benefit. Or if you don't want to, also if you're going the other way, it might bring you right down here and you cross the Gulf Stream up here so that you avoid those strong currents. So that's just a little bit about what the routing can do. It's an amazing tool. As well as the maps, so I've got the grid files behind me here and the different routes. Now, each of those colors is the different model, because we don't run just one route. We run one route for each weather model. And the idea again is that you compare them. Now, all the models are pretty much saying you're going to come down here, change course to go into the current, and then bear away and come down towards Bermuda. So that again gives me confidence in the forecast, even if I'm not racing. If all the models are telling me to go, northeast for 2 days, then that gives me confidence that that's the right thing to do. And I've used this routing a lot, and we used it all the way up to Fiji. It was so accurate. You can see fronts coming through. You can prepare within sort of 2 or 3 hours of, we know that the breeze is going to build and come around on the wind. Apart from just the maps and the lines here, you can look at the tables. And this tables is everything to do with your weather route. So you can, again, John's graph views, you can see that the breeze is going to be up around the 20s and then slowly dying. Direction's looking pretty good. So again, this is all for my route. I can break it down even further. Across the top here is all different breakdowns of my route. So I can use wind, and I can see here that the different models and a breakdown of it. So, at 9 o'clock tonight, it's going to be about 13 knots of breeze, but gusting 22 from a wind direction. What true wind angle will I be sailing? Up here, I've put into the system that I like to motor if the wind dies, because I hate drifting. So you can tell the system that you want to motor. If the breeze drops below 7 knots, I'm going to start motoring at 5.5 knots. And so the system will tell you when you're going to motor. And you wouldn't just look at one of these models again, you'd look at all of them, because again, you've got your 6 guys sitting around the table saying, well, I think Bill should go sort of southeast for a day and then turn right. And they're all like, yeah, no, I agree. Or they'll be like, nah, something totally different's going on here. You need to look at what's going on. So that's why you have all these different models. So that is weather routing. We offer that to anyone on the standard or professional level. And you can get all this information through your Iridium, through your SSB, through Starlink if you're lucky enough to have it and it's working, and it will do more in the future. So there's lots of ways to download this information. The other things we can do, so you can look at ocean data. When you're at sea, it's really important to know what's going on in the big picture. And so we can do satellite imagery. So I downloaded some satellite imagery, and I can do it in black and white and color. But the satellite imagery we're working on improving at the moment. So our goal is always to do better. We know that with the satellite imagery, you can't zoom in at the moment and pan around, but we are working on that. But you can see, this is the east coast of the States here, and there's that frontal system there that we saw on the wind maps of the other one. So that gives me an idea of how big it is. And this can all be downloaded through satellite. You can also do GMDSS forecast. So the world is broken up into about 17 areas of the world. So for my area, for where I'm routing or for where I am at the moment, I've downloaded a GMDSS forecast. It's a text-based forecast written by a meteorologist specifically for that area of the world every 24 hours. So, you know, for the Caribbean and for Mexico especially, you know, when those tropical cyclones are coming through, this will tell you gale warnings. It'll tell you about tropical cyclones, its path, how fast it's moving. So this is a text-based version. We're actually, you know, this is hard to read. We know that. You know, you need to know where you are, your lat long, it's broken up into different areas. Another thing that we're doing, we've employed one of the, an ex-Team New Zealand developer, and he's gonna convert all of this into graphical forms so that you can see on the map a tropical cyclone here, a big frontal system here, a notice to mariners here. So, you know, this is gonna be big. So again, always changing, always developing. Another cool thing that we do is GPS tracking, and this is probably not the best way to show you. I'm going to switch to this one here. So when you are with PredictWind on the standard or professional level, you can have a GPS tracking page, and you can update this page with where you are. You can put blog posts and photos down the side here, and you can set it up in many different ways. We can GPS track you from an Iridium Go, from one of our YB3Is, which is a dedicated tracking device. We've got a new device called a data hub, which you can track from as well. InReach we can track from. If you don't have any of those things, you can send us your position report manually and you can put it on this map. Now, the great thing about this is that you share this website link. So this link here up the top, we'll give it to you, and you can share that with your friends and family so that anybody that has that link can follow you and see what you're doing. So when we went to Fiji, I gave that link to my mum. I don't know whether it was good or bad, because then she was convinced we were dying every time we stopped and caught a fish, because every hour you could see that we'd, you know, the hours that we'd stopped and we're pulling in a mahi-mahi or a tuna, or we, you know, we were just sitting and having a beer at sunset and enjoying it and weren't really pushing the boat. She thought that we were all dead and drowned and whatever. So, you know, but it's a good thing. It's a good safety thing to have, right? And so that's a really nice feature. On top of that, we also do YB tracking. So YB is Yellow Brick, and Yellow Brick's a company that they follow a lot of yacht races, professional yacht races. The Newport Bermuda race is going on at the moment, and I'm just going to, hopefully one of these has got, oh, here we go. So I pre-downloaded it. So within the PredictWind app and PredictWind website, I can look at YB events. So the Newport Bermuda at the moment is going on, and I can see every one of the boats here. So, you know, I've got friends on, for example, Castillo. So if I click on Castillo, I can see where they are, what speed they're doing, and then I can compare them to the other boats. Now, if you're racing, what's actually pretty cool is you can pull all of this information into the offshore app on a satellite connection. So a lot of these boats at the moment are using the offshore app, and they want to know where their competitors are, especially at night, and, you know, who you're racing, where are the other TP52s. If I just switch back to the offshore app, I can go to YB tracking here. And if I go over to America, bear with me, here we go, and zoom in. So I'm racing in the Newport Bermuda race. I'm downloading all of the information. I can see where all of my competitors are and how they're all going. So yeah, that's pretty neat feature as well. So as you can see, there's plenty of things that we do with PredictWind. Now, bear with me. I'm going to switch to back to my screen share. Here we go. So we don't just do weather at PredictWind. We do a lot of other things as well. So we sell Iridium Goes and satellite airtime plans. So if you're going offshore, you really need some sort of satellite communication device so that you can get all of this weather. We think that the Iridium Go is a great device, but our system, our offshore app, supports other things as well. But at PredictWind, we're experts in the Iridium Go. We sell it and we support it. So if you buy one from us, we will help you set it up, and we are there to answer any of your questions. We also sell this new product called a data hub, which I was talking about, which is great for GPS tracking. this YB3i also for GPS tracking, depending on how you're doing your tracking. The data hub is for coastal sailing. When you've got a cellular connection, you can send all your position reports through that. The YB3i is, offshore cruising. It's a dedicated GPS device, but it's also a backup. So if your other satellite communications go down, you can still text message people through this and say, actually, we're okay. Send me some information on the weather, and they can reply. We got asked a lot for, can we buy some PredictWind t-shirts? So we've got some merchandise. We've got some rash tops that look pretty cool. SIM cards are for the Iridium Go. So even if you've got an Iridium Go from somebody else and you want to move over to our service, you can, just like changing from Verizon to AT&T. You can do that with us. And GPS tracking, which is huge. So how are we going? 40 minutes. I think I'll probably wrap it up there and then just go off some questions, because I've probably given you a heap of information. Your brain's swimming like mine was when I first started with PredictWind. And yeah, really happy to answer any questions. I hope that was helpful.
It was very helpful. It was very concise, very complete. Thank you so much. There's a couple of questions that Tilo has, and now as soon as, well, you take it, Tilo.
Okay, yes, so thank this. I have a few questions actually that come in from, that came from JB, who is on passage right now, so he can't join the meeting. The one, of course, now I'm thinking, okay, does he use the offshore app or is he using the normal? Because his questions are, question centers around the thesis statement. The product is painfully slow, even with average Wi-Fi or cell phone. Hence the massive Iridium builds. What can they do to improve downloads, upgrade their AWS plan? Anyway, can they avoid fancy graphics and colors, or avoid Google Earth when you search a new forecast point? The software crashes too often. Do they have any plans for improvements?
Yeah, okay. We're always wanting to improve. And so we take on board any feedback, but there'll be a lot of questions back to him. Like you say, is he using the offshore app? And in the offshore app, what's he downloading? Because you can, in the offshore app, you can choose what you want to download. And the idea, especially with the Iridium Go, is to keep the file size around about 150 to 200 kilobytes. And that file size will take you about 20 minutes to download. So the Iridium Go is painfully slow. It's like going back to the old days of dial-up and then dial it back some more. But our offshore app is designed to work with that. And so if I was doing the, Auckland to Fiji, I can get a weather route and all of the GRIB files I want for 5 days for about 100 kilobytes. So that's about 10 minutes of download. And yeah, it's slow, but twice a day, I update the forecast update. Twice a day, I request a new route and new GRIB files, and I start the computer system going. I make myself a coffee, I walk around the boat and I give everything a check, and I come back and the weather's in there. So yeah, it is slow because it's low bandwidth satellite connection. Unless you want to spend thousands of dollars a month on airtime to get the fast internet, it's actually not necessary. You can get everything you need with the Iridium Go, but you've got to be patient. And he might be trying to download ocean data, which is megabytes. It'll never work. So I'd really love him to come into support, and we can talk to him about, how to use the system a bit better. So we've got 10 of us on support. Most of us work in New Zealand. We've got a couple in Europe, but anybody at any time can email us, support@predictwind.com. We don't ignore people. We answer your questions. We try and figure out what's going on. So yeah, it might just be how he's using it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that'll be interesting for JB to find out about. Yeah. Now, Timothy asked about, are there any customs or import issues with ordering a Go from PredictWind in New Zealand to the US?
No, so even though we're New Zealand based, we have distribution warehouses around the world. So we've got one in Nevada. So they store our system and they ship it out for us. So there's no taxes in the US unless you're in Nevada. Yeah. Around the world, it's different. Like if you're importing one, if you're trying to get one into France, then you are expected to pay French VAT. So we have to adhere to the tax rules for each country, but in the US you're fine. And they're sitting there. So there is a worldwide issue with iridium at the moment. There's a shortage, this whole supply chain issue with COVID and everything. So we ran out up until about 3 weeks ago. So we've got some in stock at the moment, but if you did want them, I'd suggest you secure one soon, because we don't know when iridium's going to get the next batch to us.
Okay, good. So yeah, that Timothy's follow-on question was, so turnaround time is pretty quick, I would assume.
Yeah, 3 to 5 days. I mean, our warehouse will turn it over the next day, and then you're just relying on UPS or whichever service is selected. So once it leaves the warehouse, it's a bit out of our control, but it shouldn't be too bad. And it's not coming from New Zealand.
That's great to hear. Yeah, just to let you know, David gave a shout out for support. He said it's totally awesome.
That's great. That's so cool. We we take a lot of pride in our support, and because we're all sailors, we're not going to leave anyone high and dry. So we actually do go out of our way, and I feel a personal responsibility to some people. Like we had a guy coming from Fiji to New Zealand, and all of his satellite systems went down, but he could still SMS message, and so we were routing him back to New Zealand. He was coming from Fiji to New Zealand for whatever reason, I don't know, in winter. But we were just sending him little messages saying, hey, expect 30 knots on the nose for the next 2 days, which wasn't good, but he got the info.
Great. Dennis, do you have a question? Or no, I think Dennis Foster was asking something, but so, okay. I was just, okay. Here's a good question coming from, Timothy's question is, what is, he knows it's anybody's guess right now, but what is your best guess as an insider as to when Starlink will be available offshore?
Yeah, that's a big question that we're all wondering. My best guess, I think we're still a couple of years away, to be honest. I follow a lot of Starlink chat sites and Facebook pages and things. And, while it is mobile, even though it's not supposed to be mobile on boats yet and things like that, I think to get the technology and the dish to a state where it can handle offshore sailing properly is still a little way off. It's coming for sure. And I think it's going to be a game changer for a lot of people, but there's always going to be a place for cheap satellite systems as backups as well, because you'd be crazy to go offshore with just a Starlink, especially in the next 3 or 4 years while it's still a bit unproven. So there's always going to be a need for a backup still. I mean, if in 5 years time, I see myself sailing around the world on some big boat, preferably a gunboat 50 or something, or maybe an Amel, you never know. I'm going to have a Starlink, but I'll also have probably an Iridium as a backup, and then an inReach as a backup to that, and probably 2 Iridium goes, just backup on backup, because we know that things happen. Things break, it's just the nature of the game when you're offshore, and if you're not prepared for it, you're an idiot, because you shouldn't go offshore unprepared. There's no excuse.
Yeah. So now Dennis was asking about predictions in the Mediterranean, because what he's found in the past, or what some people have found in the past, is that the true winds end up being actually higher than predicted by all the models.
Yeah, the parts of the med can be really hard to predict, and you know, you get those isolated storms that come down from the mountains and hit the there's the different my brain's just gone dead on the names of them, but you know, there was some massive storms in Greece a couple of years ago that were boat destroying, and that wasn't really predicted very well. The thing is that the forecast models are just a prediction, and if all of the models didn't predict it well, it could have been a very localized thing. I even use local radio stations, weather forecasters at that stage. You know, you're trying to gather as much information as you possibly can, because the models will give you a forecast to a certain extent. But the thing is, a lot of those models, you know, when the wind's high, it'll say, the models will say 30 knots. That's windy. Like, you should be preparing for wind at 30 knots. You shouldn't be thinking, you know, at 30 knots, you could potentially get 45. But you should be prepared at 30 knots that it's going to be nasty. So again, you know, yeah, it's a hard one. I would be looking at, in the med, I'd be looking at the high resolution models a lot more closely, because again, if you look at the 50 kilometer or even the 100 kilometer resolution forecast, it's not going to be that accurate, because it's taking into a broad area. But a lot of those high res ones for Rome, for the Mediterranean, really great, and we offer that. So, you know, spend the time looking at those.
Okay, and then we also had got one question here is that you mentioned PredictWind with Garmin InReach, and could you expand on how that might work?
Yeah, so the Garmin, you can't get any weather data through the Garmin. It's a short burst data, so it doesn't work for our system for the offshore app and things. But for GPS tracking, it does. We can get your Garmin feed, and we can put it into your GPS tracking page. And then every time your Garmin sends a position report, we can tap into that. We can update your GPS tracking page, and that's the page that you send to your family and friends so that they can see where you are. So that, yeah, that's a really nice feature. So we can do that tracking through Iridium, Garmin, Data Hub, YB3i, YB, lots of different things.
Okay, and then one person asked, is it correct that the PredictWind forecast update is only twice a day?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's about 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. GMT time. Different models come in at different times, because if you go back again to our guys sitting around the table, one guy's a bit late, you know, so he missed the bus. So he didn't get his forecast in until a bit later. But if you wait until 8 a.m. and 8 p.m., all the forecasts should be in. If you're racing, you'll be looking and knowing that the ECMWF forecast comes in at 3 p.m. GMT time, and you'll be sitting there waiting for that model to come in. But in general, all of our tables and everything run off that refresh every 12 hours.
Okay, because of course, in some developing weather situations, such as storms build into hurricanes, in 12 hours, this can make a big difference, is what the user was saying.
Yeah, and absolutely. And it would be nice to offer it more often, but we have to look at the broader picture, and we don't get those initial conditions every hour. They're not available. So it all works backwards to the initial conditions. Once we get those, then we can put them into the model, generate the forecast. That takes a couple of hours. And each of those companies is doing the same thing. So it's not as simple as just, why can't you give us a forecast for every hour? Some of those local, so those the global models are 12 hourly, but the local models, like the HRRR, that's a rapid refresh model, and that actually does update a lot more often. I'd have to check exactly how often, but I think it's hourly. It might even be less than that. So again, different models have different parameters.
Okay. And then Timothy has one other question. If you already have an Iridium phone on board, one with both a handset and an RS-232 DB9, will the PredictWind offshore app play nice with most standard modems to download the grid files and other things, or is the offshore app fundamentally tied to the Iridium Go hardware?
Yeah, no, it's not tied to the Iridium Go hardware. It's just one of the things that we support. So if you've got a satellite phone and it has data and you can download emails, you can get our grid files. If you've got like a satellite phone, like a 9555 or a 9575, you can buy a little box from a company called Global Marine, which is an optimizer. And if you plug that into your phone, it creates a Wi-Fi hotspot, and then you can download all of the grid files, download directly into the offshore app through that system. So yeah, if you have the optimizer, it's great because it means that you can directly download the files. It takes out a bit of time. But if you don't have that and your phone can send and receive emails, you can receive all of the data that way. You send the request off, and then our system breaks it down into the different files for grids and then sends them all back to you via email, and you can open those in the offshore app.
Okay. So those are the questions that I have. Wait. Okay. And Timothy said, thanks, he got it. So
Cool.
that's terrific. Great coming back and knowing your stuff. I mean, that is clear that you know exactly how to do, what this is all about. And that's really nice to hear. Now, David on SV Peregrine said, we sail offshore with both a satellite handset, made data capable with Report Optimizer, and with an Iridium Go. So he was just saying, there's his backup of a backup.
Yeah, great. Yeah. I mean,
Mhm.
a lot of people say, oh, what should I get as a backup? If you've got an Iridium Go, another Iridium Go or a satellite phone makes sense because you can take the SIM card out of one and put it straight into the other. So, you just transfer straight to the next one. Yeah, I mean, there's always issues with electronic devices. I mean, when I was sailing to Fiji, our BNG chart plotter shut down when we were reaching along in 30 knots with 3 reefs in the main and a very small jib, and it sent us into a Chinese jibe because the self-steering shut down. So, so you've got to be prepared for every eventuality. We ripped a whole lot of blocks out of the deck and lay on our side for a bit, and it's not much fun, but it happens. So you got to be ready for it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and Daniel asked, what would you suggest? Would you suggest an Inmarsat phone as a good Iridium backup?
I don't know so much about Inmarsat phones, but again, it will work with our system. So yeah, it would be if budget's a constraint as well. So if you've already got the Inmarsat and you're not having to pay too much monthly for it, then for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think we have really enjoyed this. It looks like we've gone through all the questions, Keyrn, and I want to tell you that you win the award as being absolutely on time. It's 3.5 minutes before the hour, and we've never ever hit it that close. So you win the award. Thanks for a very concise presentation. And by the way, to everybody else, I told Keyrn just before she started how long she had. So she did an amazing job of hitting it right on the nose. So thanks a lot.
You're welcome. I could talk for hours. I've turned into a complete weather geek. So
you did it perfectly. Okay, guys, the next Zoom meeting is going to be probably in about 2 months, and I'll announce that through the group. It's going to be a presentation from noonsite.com, and most of you know that was founded by Jimmy Cornell, and this is more about port information around the world. So that'll be a couple of months away. I want to thank everybody for joining us, and especially Keyrn. Thank you very much.
Great job, Keyrn.
You are so good. I want to get on an airplane, fly to New Zealand right now.
Well, from when are we? Where people are allowed back in New Zealand from the beginning of July. So our country's so good or bad coped with COVID, but yeah, everyone's starting to come back now. So come and see us.
Okay. It's been a while since I've been there, about
Yeah.
8 years, I think. No, actually, I flew through New Zealand on the way to New Caledonia about 5 years ago. Okay,
Oh,
thanks, everybody.
yeah. Hopefully we see some Amel owners down in New Zealand soon. We'd love to have you all. And yeah, honestly, just come into support and ask any questions that you have. We're more than happy to help anytime.
There are, in this meeting right now, I think there are 4 Amel owners in this meeting that are in New Zealand.
Awesome. Great.
Okay, Tilo, yours.
Okay,
All right.
well,
all the best, everyone.
thank you very much. And yeah, this has been a great meeting. Thank you so much, Karen and Bill, of course. I'm seeing a lot of thanks coming both from the Zoom site and also from the YouTube live stream. So
Great.
the people participating absolutely reflect what I'm saying and what Bill has said. So thank you so much. And
You're welcome.
thank you everybody for being here. This meeting will also be posted online and available through YouTube. So we will look forward to seeing you. And certainly, Bill, thank you very much for setting up these meetings. You do a lot of work on it and I appreciate it. And I know everybody else does too. So thank you. And thank you, everybody.
Okay, bye.
All the best. Stay safe, everyone.
Mm-hmm.